Okay, go ahead.
All right, we're talking about the concept of incorporation, and we're talking about some of the things that are included in a typical incorporation package. These are startup-specific issues, and also want to remind everyone that two of the key things to keep in mind are that these things that are around an incorporation package are either incentives, meaning it allows you to provide incentives for people to work with you, or they are a form of protection. They protect you from various things happening. So what we're going to go through right now is something that's all contained in a single agreement, and it's called the At-Will Employment, Confidentiality, Invention Assignment, Non-Competition Agreement. I know that's a mouthful, but essentially each one of these things makes perfect sense when described on its own. So we're going to go through what these things are, and I'm going to give you guys a couple of good outcomes or bad outcomes surrounding each of these things. So you know what they're used for and what they're trying to avoid. So number one, let's talk about at-will employment. At-will employment, essentially, when you sign this agreement as an employee, by the way, these are, I should say, these are an agreement that employees sign, including key employees or founders in the company. So when you sign one of these things, at-will employment is essentially saying that you can be fired for cause. It's pretty simple. It's essentially, I can get fired at any time if I'm not doing my job. So that is different than if you were to sign an employment contract that stipulates over such and such period of time, you know, etc. So at-will employment is the first thing that typically people will agree to in a startup environment. The second is confidentiality, and that is exactly what the word means. It's that you can't talk about the company unless you're allowed to, and you can't even bring old company information into your current job. So not only am I not allowed to walk around talking about what we're doing and what we're up to and what our financials are, I also can't have come from another company and tell people inside of the new company, hey, this is what these other companies were doing, if it's confidential information. So that's what confidentiality is. And then invention assignment agreement. That is an important one. Invention assignment agreement are essentially saying anything you invent during your time at the company, whether it's copyrights or patents or any sort of process that you invent, is owned by the corporation. And were you to leave, you can't take that process or software code or IP, copyright, what have you, with you. So I'm going to make some real quick notes here, just so we can, oh man, I can't spell. This is IP, copyright, code, what have you. This is owned by the company. Alright. Then for confidentiality, this is kind of a no-talk symbol. You can't go around talking about them. And at-will employment is you can get fired if you're not doing your job. Alright, so these are three important ones. The next one over here is non-competition. So this is pretty simple to understand as well. This essentially says if you do choose to leave or if you are fired, you're not allowed to go compete. You can't go to work for your biggest competitor and bring a bunch of trade secrets there and tell them how you're running your company. And some of these are enforceable and some of them aren't. Certainly, you guys can find more information about specific non-competition agreements, but it is common practice to have new employees sign a non-competition agreement. And then also, there's dispute resolution, which isn't really a bullet point in this document, but it essentially says if there is a dispute or you do go head-to-head with the company, how will you resolve those disputes and where will they be resolved? You know, what state, is there arbitration, etc. So again, at-will employment is important because that means you can fire people. Confidentiality, people aren't running around talking about your company. Invention assignment agreements, anything they invent is company property. And non-competition, you're not going to go run to your closest competitor and compete. These are important protections. All of these are protections. So really quickly, we'll tell you some bad outcomes. If you can't fire people, you get a crappy executive that will stay at the company as long as their employment contract dictates. It's not very efficient for startups to have to deal with that. Confidentiality, it can be very bad if someone's running around either aimlessly or accidentally talking to people in a bar about what you guys are up to. Somehow that somebody knows somebody that's building something similar. They call them. All of a sudden, your competitors know what you're doing. Those would both be bad outcomes. Invention assignment. This one has the most critical bad outcomes. Let's say you hire a consultant who writes some computer code for you and disappears, and 4 years later, when your company is massively successful, that consultant comes back and says, hey, that's my code, you owe me millions of dollars because you've built all this value off that code and you promised me that I would get a percentage of the company, and it doesn't even really matter if they have proof. Now you've got a legal problem. Or somebody quits and takes their IP with them, which is more common. They say, you know what, I don't want to work with you guys anymore. I'm going to take this process that I invented and start my own company. Those are both bad outcomes. Or non-competition, someone leaves your firm who's very important and goes and works for one of your direct competitors. That can be very damaging. So it's important to understand those things. They have bad outcomes associated with them. Simply getting a new employee to sign this agreement will vastly reduce your risk and protect your corporation.